welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime with Liverpool's first team back in action this weekend after the reserves and the academy did themselves more than proud with an incredible performance against Everton in the Cup last weekend. This time out, it's going to be the big boys for the real big prizes. Liverpool, of course, back in that Premier League title tilt. Already it's looking like we've got one hand on the trophy, and I think with this run we've got coming up, we can almost put two on it, if we're being perfectly honest. The next three games Liverpool have got, we have, of course, got Spurs tomorrow on Saturday at 5:30. Then next weekend on the Sunday at 4:30, we have got Manchester United at home. And then in the midweek after that, we've got Wolves away as well. And then after that, we don't really have any difficult fixtures whatsoever, all the way up until when we play Manchester City at the start of April. So, in theory, if we come through all these games unscathed, these next three, and by unscathed, in Liverpool terms, that essentially means 9 points out of a possible 9, because that's how good we are at the moment. If we come out like that and, Man City potentially drop even further points, then I think we are so close to being home and hosed. They've got a really, really difficult run coming up as well. They've got some big six teams to play away from home. Teams like Sheffield United as well. Tough Premier League fixtures against sides that aren't necessarily going to just roll over for them. So I think if we can come out of this period, of course, it's January as well, and that carries a lot of weight under the Jurgen Klopp regime. This tends to be where we start to see the effects of the way he likes the team to play felt the most, because of the way the December fixtures pile up, and you can do as much rotation as you want, but it's always going to have some sort of effect on the team, especially when with the amount of resources that we're pouring into this Premier League campaign. It's almost inevitable at some point that we're going to have to push the players, maybe not to breaking point, but to the point where some of them do start to suffer a little bit. And while we might not see injuries to first team players, we do sometimes see slightly lacklustre performances around this time of year. I think that last season with the title race, it was around this time that things really did start to unravel ever so slightly. Of course, we get the Leicester draw at the end of the month, then we rack up a few more draws around February and March, and that's what ends up with us being behind Manchester City going into the run-in. So I think that's why I think it's so important, with the nature of where this run of fixtures has come, we can really put out a statement that this Liverpool team is better than the ones that have come before it. And that's what's so mad, because the one that came before it last season was fantastic. The one that came before it last season, of course, got a decent result in this fixture. Spurs away, we won it 2-1. It's obviously a slightly different situation because, of course, different managers, totally different situation for the opposition. And, of course, this is going to be our first game at Tottenham Hotspur's new stadium. I'm not entirely sure how that really affects us as a team. I think it certainly affects us more than it does them, because they have now settled into that stadium. They've had nearly a year there. The players know their way around it and stuff like that. It's going to be a totally new experience for all of our footballers. Hopefully it spurs them on a little bit. It doesn't necessarily look like a fortress. It doesn't look like the kind of stadium you wouldn't want to go to. It's state of the art. The dressing rooms look absolutely fantastic. It basically looks like a 5-star hotel on the inside. So I doubt our players are going to feel intimidated going into it. And hopefully, it's just a wonderful environment for them to also psych themselves up and get ready for what is, of course, going to be a massive game. It's up against Spurs' Mourinho Spurs even as well, and I think that will have an effect on the way the game is played, and I'll come on to that a little bit later on. But I certainly think this is a massive game for Liverpool and another huge chance to lay down a big marker in this title race. So team news going into the game. Jurgen Klopp had his press conference this afternoon, and there was plenty of injury news to get through. Of course, Liverpool have had quite a few players out of action over the last few weeks. They have pretty much been dropping like flies from around about the start of December. It's now got to the point where all those fellas who dropped like flies last month are starting to come back into training. I think Keita and Milner have been definitely ruled out of this game, unfortunately. Jurgen Klopp said it's muscle issues for both of them. Of course, Keita got that injury in the warm-up before the Sheffield United game, and then Milner had to come off very, very early into that game against Everton last weekend. Jurgen hasn't really put any time scale on it whatsoever, certainly not until they come back into training. I think he said they won't be available this week, they won't be available next week either, so that basically rules them out of the Manchester United and the Wolves games, and then from then on we'll see. But for now, at least, just don't think about them at all. There's no chance of them playing. On the flip side, Xherdan Shaqiri is back in training and is absolutely fine, which is a big boost for Liverpool. We could have done with him maybe in that Merseyside derby match, although as we all know, things turned out absolutely fine. It's more looking at it from a Xherdan Shaqiri perspective. I think every time he's had those opportunities in the cup games where we could have thrown him in, he could have got a little bit of football, he tends to be injured, which is obviously gutting for the lad. We have, of course, got the FA Cup 4th round coming up. He'll probably be involved in that in some capacity. Whether or not he's involved in this game remains to be seen. I think over the course of the next 3 matches and the fact that they all come in such a short amount of time, he probably will play some role, almost definitely from the bench, but I think it's important to have him back in contention for the side. So he is back in training, absolutely fine and available to play for the weekend. Joel Matip is back in training, but it's slightly different. Jurgen said that we've seen him back in full training, but he's only able to do certain exercises. Other things he's having to do alone. He's still on like a recovery program. So we probably won't see him this weekend. Of course, given how long he's been out, it's a bit of a longer layoff than the other lads. He's been out since around late October, which means it'll be a slightly longer recovery. It's not necessarily a matter of he comes back in training, he starts at the weekend. He'll probably have, I think, 1 or 2 weeks of training before he really comes into contention. But it is, of course, absolutely fantastic to see him back in. Lovren and Fabinho are expected back in training within the next week, which is fantastic as well. I think Fabinho's recovered slightly ahead of schedule. Lovren, just, we never really know with the guy. Sometimes he's out for a week, sometimes he's out for 6 weeks. It's impossible to tell, but both of them are coming back into full training next week. I think Jurgen's basically said we'll see when it comes to the Manchester United game for those guys, but they are another pair of players who will probably not be available for this Spurs game at the weekend at least. So as for how I think Liverpool are actually going to line up for the game, I think of course it is going to be Alisson Becker in goal. No judgments there whatsoever. The guy is racking up clean sheets at the moment at a rate that just wasn't seen earlier on the season. I think both of our goalies, Adrian and Alisson, were very, very unlucky with the fact that they basically got no clean sheets during the first few months. We basically conceded one pretty decent goal in every single game. It just seemed that the opposition would always come up with one way to find a way past our goalkeeper. But now we're really hitting form. Gomez back in the defence as well has definitely made a difference. We've got a settled back line, settled goalkeeper, and everything is coming up roses for Liverpool's defence at the moment. And of course, Alisson Becker being back between the sticks is contributing to that. So I think he will be starting in net for Liverpool against Spurs. In front of him, it's almost definitely going to be Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez. Joe Gomez, of course, did play in the game against Everton, so I'm slightly unsure where exactly he is with fitness. I think it's slightly different between him and Virgil van Dijk because Joe Gomez, of course, only really started to come into the side on a regular basis once Dejan Lovren went out, whereas Van Dijk has basically been playing non-stop since the start of the season, so that probably explains why Gomez got the nod in the derby, whereas Virgil van Dijk was rested, and also the fact that I think Gomez, we needed a first-team defender in there to marshal the other guys and make sure that the back line just didn't basically completely combust, as it kind of did, if we're being perfectly honest, in the game against Aston Villa in the Cup. So I think Gomez stays in the side. He's young as well. He's reasonably fit at the moment. He does have a slightly dodgy injury record, so fingers crossed nothing happens to him between now and when, of course, Joel Matip and Dejan Lovren come back, or at all really, because as I said, the back line has been absolutely fantastic with that pair marshalling it. So Gomez and Van Dijk will almost definitely be your centre-back pairing for the game against Spurs. Either side of them, there's basically no arguments here either. It has to be Andrew Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, both of them getting a complete rest in the derby, so they will be chomping at the bit to go in this game, which is, of course, exactly how we like them because they are so integral to our system, both going forward and heading back and defending as well. Ahead of them in the midfield, with no Fabinho, I think Jordan Henderson continues in that number 6 role. He is in the form of his life at the moment, so I've got no problem with that whatsoever. The guy is killing it in the midfield. The way he plays, the energy, the tenacity, the ability to read the play, win the ball back, get it moving. He's improved his set-up play as well. His contribution to the front three is just sublime at the moment. Those long balls over the top and around defenders are doing so much for the forwards. So I think he definitely keeps his place in the number 6, and that can only be a good thing for Liverpool. Either side of him, I think Gini Wijnaldum absolutely has to play again, rested for the derby, been brilliant so far this season. The other midfielder, there's a little bit of a debate around. Personally, I think he's going to go with Oxlade-Chamberlain. There's been a lot of shouts for Lallana, who's kind of having a really good patch of form at the moment. Jurgen Klopp really seems to trust him right now, playing him in the game against Sheffield United. And then, of course, in the match against Everton, he was fantastic. He helped marshal the midfield. He was the senior figure there. He kept dictating the tempo. He kept the energy up and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people are expecting Lallana to play, but I think given his years and the fact that he's been in and out of the side, it maybe doesn't quite make sense to make him play 3 games on the trot, especially given the intensity of that derby match as well. I know there's been 6 days since it, but he did play in the game against Sheffield United before the derby as well. So that was 2 games in the space of just 3 days. And I think the guy deserves a rest, really. Like I said, with his age, with the fact that he's been in and out of the side, he hasn't quite got the same rhythm. And he does have injury problems as well. And given how depleted our midfield is at the moment, I know Ox is coming back. We can potentially, not Ox, Keita's coming back. Milner will be back at some point. We can, of course, put Minamino in there now, and Shaqiri can play that role in certain games, but I think we've just got to wrap anyone in cotton wool whenever it is possible. And while Lallana's been absolutely fantastic, I do think Ox will be very important to this game as well. So I reckon he gets the nod in midfield alongside Henderson and Gini Wijnaldum. And then in front of them, I don't think there's going to be any surprises here. I think it's going to be Salah down the right, Mane down the left, and Firmino down the middle. Of course, we'd love to see some Minamino at some stage, and I think maybe he does get a substitute appearance. It'll be interesting to see if Jurgen Klopp does substitute him and what context he subs him on in, because of course, if it's 3-0 up to Liverpool within an hour, then it obviously makes sense to bring him on, get him a bit of football, bring him up to speed, introduce him to the Premier League and the Liverpool way of playing, and of course, get him some time playing alongside all the first teamers as well. He was impressive in that derby match, but I feel like we've still got so much more to see of him, because the way he played, his movement and everything, and the way he played little passes, his ability on the ball as well, it looks like he would thrive alongside the rest of our front three, and I really want to see him slotted into one of those roles. So I'd love to see him at some point in this game, and it'd be fascinating to see if Jurgen Klopp trusts him. Say if it is 1-1 with 20 minutes to go, and Mo Salah or Mane or Firmino is starting to tire, or it's looking like we need an extra attacker on the pitch. It'd be fascinating to see whether Jurgen Klopp goes with the safe bet of someone like Divock Origi or maybe even Xherdan Shaqiri, or if he trusts MINAMINO and throws him in. I think, like all Liverpool fans, we want to see him in some capacity this weekend. Ideally, we see him in one that's a little bit less intense, where the pressure's off him, where we've already got the game won, and he just gets to showcase himself and express himself in a Liverpool shirt. But of course, if he ends up coming on, scoring the winner in our first game at Tottenham Hotspur's new stadium, then he would of course become a Liverpool icon straight away, and that'd be absolutely fantastic. But I think he'll start from the bench, and the usual suspects will be the ones who lead the line from the front. So taking a little look at Spurs then, they have got plenty of injury problems of their own. If you thought Liverpool's injury list looked bad, and to be honest, it does, and I don't think there's a huge difference in terms of the amount of players that aren't available, and also in terms of the quality of those players that are out injured. I think the real difference with Liverpool is we've got players that are capable of stepping up, and we've got that Jurgen Klopp intensity identity that runs all the way through the squad, so we're not as worried about players further down the pecking order coming in for a game of this calibre. This is absolutely massive, and I think it's even bigger for Spurs than it is for Liverpool. The state they are in at the moment, they're on a really wretched run of form. I think it's something like 1 win in 5. This is a real chance for Mourinho to lay down a marker, and this is his kind of game as well, but he hasn't necessarily got the squad that he'd want for it. Of course, Harry Kane is out until April, and that is an interesting one, because I think on the surface it looks like a massive blow. Of course, he's Spurs' talismanic striker. He scores so many goals for them. But we can all kind of agree that last season, their Champions League run was almost built on the fact that they didn't have him available. It suited their style of play in a way. They could play more of a counter-attacking system. They could rely more on the pace of the forwards, and they could rely on those forwards to track back when necessary. Whereas when Harry Kane came in for the final, I know some of it was down to the fact that he was clearly just not fit and should not have been starting on that pitch by any stretch of the imagination. But he seemed to slow down the players around him as well. They were trying to play through Kane, and everyone was stifling themselves as a result. And I think that happens quite a lot for Tottenham, and it maybe almost loosens the shackles for this game at the weekend, and it will probably serve the way they play. I know there's obviously the caveat that if they had Kane on the pitch, they could almost rely on the fact that they could create 1 or 2 chances on the counter and just hope that he finishes it off, because he is that good in front of goal. But I think without him in the side, they will probably get more opportunities, because there'll be more freedom of movement around that front line. But they've got other injury problems as well. Sissoko is not going to be available, and Ndombele is probably not going to be available. I think there's a doubt over the fitness of Harry Winks as well, maybe. I'm not entirely sure about that one. Wanyama is just a shell of what he used to be. Eric Dyer has been on and off the sick bed lately. It's not going well, the Mourinho regime, I think it's fair to say. But like I said, this is his type of game, and he's almost better when he's got his back up against the wall, when his options are limited, and when he has to really coach. That's what he's always been best at, and it was his downfall at Manchester United, was he didn't coach the side. He was basically just given too much money and too many star players, and it was more just about trying to get the best out of them, rather than Mourinho coming in and getting players who revered him, who looked up to him, who would absolutely die for them. I'm not entirely sure Spurs have that, if I'm perfectly honest. I think the players are still suffering from a Pochettino hangover. I think if anything, they needed a manager more like Jurgen Klopp to come in, someone who would put his arm around the players, who would kind of, relax a little bit, give them a little bit of time to themselves, time to think, wouldn't be as intense. Whereas Mourinho, certainly for a game like this, intensity is so important to the way he wants the team to set up, and I'm just not entirely sure they have that in them. The Mourinho bounce has already worn off. We have yet to see that archetypal performance under him, and I think that's why this game is so massive for Tottenham. I think this is the perfect chance for Mourinho to show that he has still got it, that he can still coach sides to be an absolute nightmare to play against. It's slightly thrown a spanner into the works that it's at Tottenham Stadium. I think that'll work in Liverpool's favour. If this was at Anfield, I'd be really worried that we'd see basically a repeat of the Chelsea 2014 game, where, because they're away from home, because they had a depleted squad in that game as well, they were really up against it with injuries, and I think we forget about that. He basically just went complete backs to the wall, get a goal on a counter-attack if you can, but the most important thing is that we do not let them in under any circumstances. Of course, plenty of things has changed. Football's moved on. Mourinho's not the man he was. I don't think the squad see him in the same way that Chelsea team did. And of course, the biggest thing that's changed is Liverpool are the absolute business. And I think if Spurs do try and play that low block, stifle us, don't let us in, I think Liverpool have got more than enough tools to get round them now. We've got the added threat of the fullbacks as well, which essentially builds a front five that can more than match whatever back five or back six Spurs try and put together. If they do try and deal with all that, they've then got to deal with the threat coming from midfield. Henderson can play the balls from deep. Oxlade-Chamberlain can drive into the box and create extra space for the attackers. Gini van Alden is just Gini van Alden. And then there's options from the bench as well. You have, of course, got Divock Origi, who's just an absolute madman. Xherdan Shaqiri, who's slightly unpredictable. MINAMINO, who they're going to know basically absolutely nothing about the ways that we're going to try and deploy him in this Liverpool side. So I think we've got more than what it takes to beat this side, regardless of how they play. Personally, I don't think it is going to be the archetypal Mourinho performance. I think it's possible, and I'm not going to rule it out because I don't want to be eating my words on Saturday evening when I sit down in front of this camera again. If Liverpool have drawn the game 0-0 or 1-1 or, God forbid, lost, which just feels like, you know, a total impossibility at the moment, but it cannot be ruled out. And I think if it's going to happen at any point this season, this is perhaps the most likely because of the nature of that Mourinho performance. But if you ask me, I don't think it's going to work out like that. I don't think the Spurs players are going to be able to implement his plan to the level of effectiveness that is necessary to stop this Liverpool side. And I think whether it takes a minute, half an hour, 60 minutes or 95 minutes for Liverpool to find the breakthrough, I would back them all the way to find the back of the net at some point and take all 3 points all the way back up to Merseyside, because that is just what this Liverpool team does at the moment. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're around here. Subscribe button. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at Focus TV on Twitter if you as well. Apart from that, I will see you on Saturday evening after we've hopefully beaten Spurs. Until then, bye for now.